There's people that just seem to do good in this world that you really just want to see grow old, being that person in the background that you always know is there. And for many people in the late 80s and the 90s, that person was John F. Kennedy Jr., the son of the former President of the United States of America, John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in Dallas in 1963. John obviously knows that he grew up with a privileged life and is aware of it, but John's personality was a mixture of politics and making fun of himself at times from his views on politics, and having to take the bar exam 3 times after he passed law school in '89. John seemed to have it all, and he did, till tragedy will take it all away. This is the story of the death of John F. Kennedy Jr., who we wanted so much more for. The last moments in John's life all seem to happen in a very fast ending to a story. It seems unbelievable if it were a movie. As John grows to be a man and live a life everyone is curious about, we see John take on the role of a similar look that of Prince Diana, always being watched by the paparazzi, building his own life from what everybody thought he was going to do. John could have easily started a career in politics very early on and got somewhere with a fast pace. If he wanted to, he had the connections, and quite frankly, people wanted him to run. People love John just because he's come from an unusual story. Many think that John will go into politics himself, but he's wanting to do his own thing at the moment. In 1995, John will help start a magazine named George. John is the face of the company. The magazine is centered around politics, an element John knows and grew up in. If you didn't grow up in this time, then you may just not understand how known and well loved John really was. It was almost like he was a movie star. By 1994, John had lost both his parents, his father in Dallas in '63, and now his mother, Jackie Kennedy. He would bury his mother, and the world from that point would really start to see another side of John F. Kennedy Jr. It was obvious that John was growing up, starting his own business, talking more about politics, hanging around more politicians, or people that were just well known in big cities, where John lived and showed his face every day. John's love life has always, in no doubt, been the main topic in the media for a strong selling point for any magazine or TV show. John has been spotted dating different women over the years. One of his more serious girlfriends early on was actress Daryl Hannah. They dated for quite some time. Needless to say, they were a very popular couple. They eventually broke up though in late 1994, 3 months after John lost his mother. But John will meet a new person, Carolyn Bessette. They would start dating. It was very obvious to the public that Carolyn was very shy and bashful to the public. A great amount of their relationship was caught on film and in pictures, even the two of them having a fight in Central Park, and then later on making up and having a kiss down the street. John will even bring up Carolyn, saying that she's just shy, and he's okay with that. Carolyn doesn't like being stalked by the paparazzi, followed all the time. This will go even so far as that when the two are on vacation, Carolyn will have pictures taken of her from a man on the beach, to where John will ride over, jump out of his kayak, and make it known that he's not happy. But even so, when the video is seen by the world, people take John's side and love him even more for it. That he's standing up for the woman that he loves. As John now finds himself in love and getting married with a private little ceremony in a little church with only close friends and family, his life looks like a fairy tale story. John's well known, good business, headed the right way, more than likely will have a career in politics later on. At the time, it seems that John has everything picture perfect. John and Carolyn, and now more than ever, the main attraction in New York City for the paparazzi to target. One big element will change the outcome of John's life. In 1998, John will attain his pilot license, and not long after this, will buy his own little plane, With less than 400 hours of flying time, much less in the dark, and even more less in his new plane, on July 16, 1999, John will attempt to fly to his cousin's wedding with his wife and her sister, which will cost him everything. John and Lauren, Carolyn's sister, would leave Manhattan for the Fairfield airport a little after 6:30 p.m., where Carolyn would arrive separately, somewhere right around 8 p.m., where she would directly get on the plane. Around 8:38 p.m. on July 16th, 99, John would depart from Fairfield, New Jersey. John's plan was to follow the coastline all the way up to Rhode Island coast and then fly over into Martha's Vineyard to drop off Caroline's sister, then fly over to Hyannis for the wedding. He had made this trip many times before, just never in the dark. Going into this flight, friends will say this about John. They say John is stressed, not having much sleep the night before. He's been up all day at this point, but now John is in his new Piper Saratoga, which he has less than 40 hours flying in. We know that Carolyn flew a little, assisting John and learning herself from the instructor that would be with him most of the time. But for some reason on this flight, Carolyn and her sister would sit in the back of the plane this time, buckled in, where she was not able to provide any help to John. When they first take off, John would make no contact with the radio tower. He simply just got in the plane, and the most disturbing part that will cost him is that he never made contact asking about weather conditions. As the plane takes off, the flight seems to be going fine. We really don't know much. Maybe the girls were sitting in the back because they were tired, wanting to get some rest themselves, never thinking John would be too tired himself or become confused. But what we do know is a little after they pass Rhode Island, drifting off the coastline, John would fly over into deep water. Around 9:39 p.m. that night is the last time the FAA would ever make contact with the plane. Around this time, we know that John became confused. He was off course. It's obvious he was not recognizing where he was at. Lights are not reflecting off the land or buildings or even the beach. It's just pitch black over the ocean. To make matters worse, the moon was not out that night. 34 miles out from Martha's Vineyard, the plane started to descend. It then starts to turn to the right heavily, while pulling back up into the sky. The last known altitude was 1,100 feet that John was at. After this, all contact is lost. The plane simply disappears off radar. It's believed that John just became confused. He was not even allowed to be flying at night by himself, and simply just inexperienced, running into foggy weather, becoming lost, not knowing which way was up or down, left or right, and with that, the plane will crash into the ocean. Just hours later, around 2 a.m., the Coast Guard will start to look for John's plane, with ships, planes, and by the morning, the media has grabbed hold of the story, and the world knows what's going on. A massive search will be underway for the plane and the crew. So much so that the president at the time, Bill Clinton, will make an announcement that he is pushing and giving whatever resources he needs to find John, Carolyn, and Lauren, where he will be criticized later on for putting so much money and effort to finding one person, some will say. The only thing they do know is that John's plane has no equipment for any sort of rescue, no RAF, no flares, nothing. On July 19th, debris will slowly start to appear, luggage and foam from the plane. This is where the Navy will start scanning the bottom of the ocean floor, which will lead to, on the next day, the whole plane will be found on the bottom of the ocean bed. By July 21st, the search has ended. Carolyn and her sister will be found, still in the back of the plane that is separated from the front of the plane. The debris field would be very large, but they do find the front of it with John. He is still strapped to his seat, where he has sat on the bottom of the ocean for days now, just waiting to be found. What is left of the plane is mangled, but will all be taken to be studied to figure out what has happened. The bodies are brought back to shore. The Kennedy family will identify the remains of the crew found. It's a weird situation. Most of the Kennedy family are all together at this moment, waiting for a wedding to take place to celebrate. But now they will be burying one of their own, and the wedding is postponed. Now that the bodies of John, Carolyn, and Lauren are in the hands of their families, they will be taken to have an autopsy and then right after, be cremated. All families will come together to spread the ashes of John, Carolyn, and Lauren in the ocean where they love to spend their time. The story of John F. Kennedy Jr. is a very big, broad story that one could talk about for hours. What he did, what he planned to do. There's no doubt that John may have ran for president by now and have already won a term, but what we're left with now is just the memory of John. What he was, what he may have been, and what he has become, which is an icon in history. The story of John F. Kennedy Jr., who we wanted so much more for.